Welcome to The More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. Hello, I'm Kevin Kelton. I'm a moderate Democrat living in Los Angeles, California.
I'm Cliff Dunn. I'm a Republican from Newport News, Virginia.
I'm DJ McGuire, a conservative Democrat from Suffolk, Virginia.
I'm Helena Henry, an evangelical conservative from Colleyville, Texas.
And I'm Greg Matuzak, a liberal Democrat from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hello, gang. Welcome to the show. And with over 500,000 downloads, The More Perfect Union is one of the fastest growing political podcasts on iTunes. The More Perfect Union can also be found on YouTube, Facebook, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can also find host bios and commentary. So everybody, we have an amazing week. As always, we did a rundown that was just too full to cover everything in the news. And we are approaching the end of the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. So we're going to focus tonight mostly on American politics. We know that there was an election in France yesterday. We know there's an election upcoming in Britain. And we're going to cover all of that this Thursday in our After Dark episode. But right now, let's focus on American politics. Coming to the end of the first 100 days of the Trump presidency, the honeymoon period. And everybody, let's hear some violin music for that honeymoon. Wasn't it romantic?
There was a honeymoon?
Was there ever a honeymoon?
No.
Was there ever this sweet, glowing, warm? I mean, Trump's ratings never really got out of, to put it nicely, the toilet. They always stayed low. So that first 100-day glow never really worked. So when he talks, and Trump's been saying this a lot, like it's a meaningless number for him. I hate to say, it really is. It's just a number, like age is a number. For him, he's been talking the 100 days is a number. For him, it really is. For most presidents, you have that 100 days. It's that love fest. He never got that love fest.
Well, he did from his base. They still love him.
No.
Not as much. So there's actually a lot of reporting that's coming out of the New York Times that is indicating that the people who make up his base have lost confidence in him and are, to some extent, less inclined to continue to support him going forward. Of course, you're always going to have pockets that will be diehard Trumpers and won't acknowledge the things that have gone poorly, but we're seeing some erosion in the base.
Obviously, we see different news sources. There's no right or wrong here. Helena read the New York Times, which I respect tremendously, and got one point of view. I was watching This Week with George Stephanopoulos just a little while ago, and they reported that Trump's approval rating with his voters is still at 92%. 92% of the people that voted for him approve of the job he's doing.
What?
And they also said that if an election were held today nationally, not just with Trump voters, nationally, that he would beat Hillary Clinton more decisively than he did on Election Day. Now, that's what ABC
That's
News
bizarre.
said.
That's bizarre because the Wall Street Journal has come out with reporting that directly contradicts that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Wall Street Journal, NBC News
only
poll.
way those numbers were right is if the pollsters were Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, and Arthur C. Clarke. Because those numbers, Kevin, are science fiction.
From the Twilight Zone.
Those numbers are science fiction.
Well, argue with George Stephanopoulos. So let's get back to what's in the news. Okay, we've argued over statistics, but we do know the U.S. Congress either has to pass a budget resolution this week or the government will shut down. I believe the deadline for that is sometime on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. What do you guys think? Will there be a government shutdown? And if not, what is Trump's best play to avoid it? And what is the Democrats' best play to avoid a government shutdown?
Well, Trump's best play to avoid a shutdown, well, the Republicans' best play, as it were, is to pack through some sort of reconciliation, qualifying, continuing resolution to punt this for a few weeks and give themselves some more time.
But what does that buy? Because I understand, that happens a lot with these budget deadlines where they'll punt it down, as you said, they'll punt it down the road for 2 weeks or 2 months, But he has other things that he wants to get done. He still wants to deal with building the wall, which I know is going to be part of this negotiation. He wants to revisit healthcare reform. He wants to get involved in tax reform. by pushing it, until after the summer recess, what does he accomplish?
So I think what's really important is you said two different things, what Trump wants and what Congress wants. Trump wants A, Congress wants B. Trump wants that wall. And Congress doesn't really care at that point. It's not really that big of a deal. The other thing,
care.
I don't think it's a priority.
But in the negative. They care in the negative.
Right. The other thing that's really interesting is Trump's a business guy, and he wants to start negotiating with the shutdown. He sees this as a tactic, and he feels like, well, you know what? This is now our chip to play. If you guys do not give us what we want, this wall, we can shut down. And he thinks that he can walk away like any business negotiation. And this is why it's not a good idea to put a business leader as a president.
Well, I mean, the bigger hang-up here is that unlike previous shutdowns where it was almost always a president and an opposition-controlled either Congress or at least one house of Congress, here the Republicans, broad coalition though it may be, control both the House and the Senate. So I have no idea how the optics would play on this. Whereas usually in a shutdown fight between a president and the opposition party, the president comes out looking better than the opposition party somehow.
Right.
And that's why I think there's actually going to be a shutdown, because no one really knows how this will play out. And until someone recognizes that they are being politically damaged by refusing to concede, then no one will actually concede anything. The Democrats don't want funding in a wall, and they have some filibuster control over that in the Senate. Not a whole lot, but enough to make the Republicans nervous. The Republicans in Congress themselves have a whole bunch of competing priorities. They're not sure they can get all their caucus on side regarding that. And the president wants the funding for the wall come what may. Nobody is in a position yet to know who gets hurt by refusing to concede. So everyone will refuse to concede until somebody says, oh, I'm actually losing political capital here. I'm getting damaged. I will give in and negotiate. Nobody knows right now.
I have a theory here, and as with all my theories, I have no basis for this belief. But
Awesome.
Those are the best
Those are my
theories.
favorite.
I know, those are the best kind. I know. If only you could write legal briefs that way. I cite to nothing, but I suppose that. So I think that there's a chance that we get a couple months down the road and Trump actually doesn't care about this wall, come what may. I think that if the Kushner, Ivanka versus, Bannon, to the extent he's still even at the White House, battle comes out the way it looks like it's going to, which is in favor of the White House Democrats, I could see a world in which Kushner and Ivanka push the president to abandon the wall and similar policy objectives that they think put him in the history books as the worst president the country's ever seen. And I could see them convincing him to embrace different trajectories that are not in line with what he campaigned on. So all of this may come down to not a much ado about nothing.
For what it's worth, Helena, I can see that happening. However, my instinct says that doesn't happen until after a bad midterm.
Yeah, which would be silly.
I'm going to jump in and say I will take issue with Helena and to a lesser extent with Cliff, because I think if you believe that Trump doesn't care about the wall, I don't know what Donald Trump you've been watching. I don't think he has core values, but I think when he makes up his mind on something, he makes up his mind on something.
I just know.
Of course not. That is absolutely not true.
Hang on, Kevin, I've got some questions for you. So when Trump made his mind that he was going to brand the Chinese Communist Party a currency
manipulators,
how
he
firm
didn't
did
even
hold
know
on
what that meant. He didn't even know what that meant.
Well,
he knows what the wall means. He didn't even know whether a weak dollar was good for the American economy or bad for the American economy.
Yes, an economist will also disagree over that.
My favorite.
Let me finish my point
true.
before everybody jumps on me. Let me go further into my point.
Okay.
Which is that apparently, as of today, now with 5 more days until the real eyeball-to-eyeball showdown, all of the people in the administration are saying Trump is going to go to the mats to get funding for the wall. The way he plans to do it is to tell the Democrats, if you give me some money to start work on the wall, I will not end subsidies for ACA premiums, for Obamacare premiums. And my question to you is this. Let's just assume that that's the deal that he's put on the table because it's in every single newspaper that that's where this negotiation is at this point. What I can't understand is the logic of it. Why would the Democrats agree to a deal to keep subsidies for ACA premiums when they know this guy is going to turn around 2 weeks later and push another bill to reform and do away with Obamacare, which would mean that the deal would be meaningless for the Democrats?
I can answer that question. The answer is, as I understand it from the Democrats' negotiating position, what they want specifically is that they want the premium support subsidies from the, what I still call the Patently Deficient and Unaffordably Careless Act, to be made mandated spending as opposed to discretionary spending. And what that means is, at present, the subsidies have to be put in the budget year after year after year. They have to be officially appropriated. If they're made mandated spending, you need to actually change the legislation to stop the money being spent out.
That's what they plan to do.
Right.
Hang on, though. If you are the Democrats and you are watching the great car crash that was the American Unhealthy and Careless Act, you can step back and say, wait a minute, if we give Trump his wall money, I'm not saying they're going to do that, and he agrees to make this mandated, all we have to do is either flip 2 or 3 Republicans in the Senate or filibuster, depending on how they want to do it, and we can keep Obamacare in place, and those subsidies will never go away, and we don't have to make them part of next year's budget fight, 2019's budget fight, 2020's budget fight. It is a movement forward and an assumption that the Republicans will never get their act together on Obamacare. And I'm not saying it's a gamble that should be taken. Kevin will probably still think it's not a gamble that should be taken. But I think some Democrats are looking and saying, we can mess them up on this for years and avoid budget fights over this if we make it mandated spending. Is it worth letting Donald Trump have fun with his wall? I honestly don't know the answer to that question, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I cannot say whether the tactics are necessarily going to be right with that, the Democrats doing that, but I think that is a very reasonable gambit for the Democrats to go to, because at that point, in exchange for a little bit of money for a wall, they get to claim a non-trivial policy win on Trump, I would argue.
Okay, well, we disagree on that, but DJ said something very interesting. Gambles worth taking, which leads us to the next topic on our agenda. Bill O'Reilly being ousted at Fox. They could have taken a gamble and tried to fight this one out, keep him on, lose some sponsors, but keep the brand. Or they could have tried to clean up shop, which is apparently the way they're going, and cut loose their biggest ratings grab. What do you guys think? Did Fox do the right thing, the smart thing, the expedient thing, or were they forced into this?
I'm happier than a pig in mud about this. But what drives me nuts is I saw Peggy Noonan on Meet the Press this morning, and she was sitting there going, oh gosh, this is just the greatest thing. Oh, it just had to happen, blah, blah, blah. But this is where she made her nut. She made her nut from this conservative jackass. And from that air, I'm going to say it. And
what?
Wait, yes. This is where she's been peddling her crap from Bill O'Reilly's back, and where everyone's grandparents have been sitting in their living room listening to Bill O'Reilly, and all of a sudden she throws him under the bus like, yep, he had to go. This guy, we got to draw the line. And just drives me nuts.
Okay, stop. Greg, what in the hell are you talking about?
She sat there for years listening to... what in the hell are you talking about? She sat there for years listening to Bill O'Reilly's sexist and crappy, terrible talk, and she was like, this is where I am going to be a much more popular conservative shill. And then all of a sudden she's like, Bill O'Reilly's sexist. I'm shocked.
Was she really a staple? She was a staple on the O'Reilly Factor?
Not that she was a staple on the O'Reilly Factor, but people bought into that message. That whole conservative garbage.
Okay, stop.
Yes!
You
cannot say,
Greg,
you cannot say that Bill O'Reilly was the whole message.
You have completely lost your mind. Peggy Noonan.
Wait. We can talk about that.
No, I'm sorry, Greg.
I'm
sorry. Stop.
That's two different subjects.
Yeah. You can go find it. Go ahead and go find your mind again. And while you're out there, can you go find mine too? I lost mine about 20 years ago. But I do remember when I still had it, that Peggy Noonan was a speechwriter for Ronald Reagan long before anybody knew who the hell Bill O'Reilly was. She had a column in the Wall Street Journal throughout the 1990s when nobody knew who the hell Bill O'Reilly was. Peggy Noonan has been around far, far longer than Bill O'Reilly. And they, if anything, within the broader conservative movement, these two passed like ships in the night. Contrary to what so many people on the left may not recognize, Bill O'Reilly had a lot of critics on the right for just about all the time he was on the air. People who disagreed with him on policy. I know, I was one of them. People who disagreed with him on his antics. People who disagreed with him on his style. None of you bothered to notice that because you didn't pay attention to the right very much. You just looked at Bill O'Reilly and said, oh, he speaks for everybody. It would be like me looking at Bernie Sanders warbling on something on MSNBC and saying, oh, he obviously speaks for everybody on the left.
Hear us talk
you would
about
scream
Bernie
bloody
Sanders.
murder at me because you would know that was wrong.
Can I tell you guys what I find humorous about all of this? Hold on, Helena, I'll let you get in. Can I tell you guys what I find humorous about all this? You know, a lot of people listen to our show driving to work and maybe, you know, a car cuts in front of them and they, for a moment, their attention is taken away. And there's going to be people listening to this and going, wait a second. Bill O'Reilly sexually harassed Peggy Noonan? When did that happen?
I hope not. I hope no harm ever happened to Peggy Noonan.
No, of course not. But let's let Helena get in.
Well, what I was going to say is, while we're on the topic of people who've lost their minds, Greg and maybe DJ,
oh, I know.
I can tell you.
Throw me in there, too.
I can tell you, there's a group of people related to this Bill O'Reilly saga who've lost their minds, and they are the lawyers at, I think it's Kasowitz Benson something. There's a law firm that was hired to represent Bill O'Reilly, and what happened is, as a lawyer, this blows my mind. I am vicariously anxious and sleepless because of what these lawyers have done. There were emails, privileged emails, I presume, from their client, Bill O'Reilly, to the lawyers, and the lawyers were urging him to disclose to Fox that there is a smear campaign going on to try to get O'Reilly out of Fox. And Bill O'Reilly asked them not to reveal this, not to bring this up with Fox. There is a lawyer at the firm who accidentally forwarded the email to Politico.
No.
So yes, breaking privilege, right? Breaking privilege, and putting all of this Bill O'Reilly shenanigans out there for the world to see. So I'm going to assume it was an associate. Maybe it was a partner. This is actually...
You mean an ex-associate, an ex-partner.
An ex, yeah, this actually, from a law firm perspective, this is like the Oscars with PwC. This is a disaster. This is an absolute disaster for a firm to have something that's so high profile, to break privilege, and to have, confidential client information get out there. I'm having heart palpitations just thinking about it.
I think Bill O'Reilly's probably going to come out of this with, his severance pay and
$25 million.
Yeah, $20 million. He's going to make a fortune off the law firm. It'll be almost like he was flying United.
And he's got a podcast that he's going back to tomorrow. So our competition's going to spike.
So here's the thing. So I'm not shocked to hear. I think we do need to talk about the sexual assault element here, and we've seen a theme. I won't say with white male Republican men this week, but I'll say white male Republican men. Bill O'Reilly, the Florida state senator, I can't say his last name, Frank Articles, something like that. We're seeing a theme of men who claim to uphold these conservative values, who disrespect women, who disrespect minorities, who demonstrate through their frankly boorish behavior that they have really no business being the faces of the conservative movement. And I think that the right has a serious cancer within it that has caused these men to get to such positions of prominence. It shouldn't be surprising, right? Because if you look back to the founding fathers, what they cared about is restraining sin. So when we see these people acting this way, we shouldn't be shocked. I think the right needs to take a good, long, hard look at what they've become and really figure out what they want to be, not just on the presidential level and the electoral level, but in terms of who are the voices that speak for us.
Helena, the sorts of deep flaws in prominent individuals among the right wing is nothing new. Look back to Pat Robertson over the years and all of his...
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And Jim and Tammy Faye Baker also come to mind, and so on and so forth.
But you would think there would be less tolerance, nowadays.
Why? I mean, if you look upon who the Republicans chose to nominate for president of the United States, would you not say that the cancer has in fact taken over and is now the host organism?
I wouldn't say it's taken over. I think that the problem is there are deep factions. There is division. The party has the same identity crisis that the Democratic Party has, but they don't know what to do about it because they've got a standard bearer. I don't think it's taken over. I think it looks like it's taken over for obvious reasons, but it's more a coup, I think, than a real identity shift.
I think part of it was also down to the fact that you had a significant number of voters who were just, quite frankly, sick of bathroom fights and so forth dominating everything ad nauseum, and Trump was the repudiation of that for some of them.
Yes, and that's something that we, for some reason, are hesitant to talk about. But the extent to which some of those political questions played into the election, I think, has been understated. I think that you have a large percentage of the electorate that believed for all of their lives that gender meant certain things and sexual orientation meant certain things, and culture comes in and redefines those, and the Supreme Court comes in and redefines those. And there's a backlash to that.
Okay, so I want to jump in here. I'm going to call an audible because we hadn't planned to talk about Melania Trump at this point in the show, but we're on the subject of sexism or misogyny in the Republican Party. And I think that is a natural transition to saying there's a certain amount of sexism on the liberal side of the political spectrum in the way that Melania Trump is being maligned, even though this woman, based on everything I've seen, is just trying to live her life in relative anonymity. I don't see her as being an outspoken first lady, and yet people are still jumping on her for everything she does, doesn't do, they think should do. I'm still seeing people posting pictures of her nudes from before she was married.
I think that's wrong. Yeah,
it is wrong. But I'm saying the left has its own type of sexism. I'll go back to Helena. Am I making a point here? What do you think?
I disagree with you. The thing with Melania is, one, she has not set up her life to live in relative anonymity. She married Donald Trump, right? And she married Donald Trump in the year 2005, when Donald Trump was already who he was. And in terms of her responsibilities and the criticism she's gotten from the left and the right, by the way, I think it's fair, but I think that people, what they're actually reacting to is not what they think they are reacting to. I think what they're actually reacting to is she has failed to, much like her husband, follow the script that requires that she take up and champion a real cause. And I say this not to be sarcastic, but I mean this. I think her cause, I think the thing that consumes the majority of her time is her physical appearance. That is her raison d'etre. And that's just not what the position of First Lady is supposed to be. So I think that the sexism, or what looks like sexism, is actually valid criticism, which is you have a responsibility. You are holding an office that has been held by great women who have accomplished wonderful things and who have served this country beautifully and who have, served and helped their husbands and have been the voices that their husbands could trust at the end of the day, and to come in or to not come in, to stay in New York and cost taxpayers $1 million a week and just continue your life, going to Pilates, frankly, is unacceptable.
I mean, I get what you're saying. She is desecrating that hallowed constitutional position of First Lady.
I didn't say constitutional. I didn't say that, but I do respect tradition.
Yeah, no, what I would argue is that if somebody is fulfilling the traditional role of First Lady in this White House, it is Ivanka, not Melania.
Absolutely.
And that's non-standard, but it's also, I would argue, There is precedent for other family members or individuals stepping into this role. I believe when Woodrow Wilson's first wife passed away, another family member stepped in to fill that gap. So
I'm going to interrupt there. Ivanka has security clearance. First ladies usually don't get security clearance of that magnitude, do they?
Well, a serious practical question.
I don't know.
Did Hillary? And for that matter, would Bill have had it in the Hillary administration?
Would Chelsea? Chelsea would have had it in the Hillary administration.
Yeah. So there's your answer. That's.
And would the right have been outraged if Chelsea would have been set up with an office and been an advisor, and if Chelsea's husband had been set up at like a Jared Kushner and would set up? And
yes, they would have.
Mark Levinsky.
Yeah, would the right be just as upset as we are with a Kushner said, "Here are we don't care about your qualifications or your past. You are now set up with security clearance. You're going to go to Iraq for me, and so on and so on."
So I will say, simply because Jared Kushner came from my alma mater, qualifications. Actually, both of them, Ivanka and Jared, they both have that, right? So we know that none of this is a concern about their.
I agree. Being a purse magnet really does. A purse entrepreneur selling purses across the world really does.
A purse guru.
An Ivy League purse guru, right? With
really
a degree
does
from
set you
Wharton
up
and
for
a Harvard
foreign
law
policy.
or Harvard and NYU law graduate. But yes, continue.
Yes.
Well, okay, so I find myself in the amazing position of being a defender of Melania Trump this week, which was one of the things I love about this show is you never know where people are going to come from, including myself. I did not come into this episode thinking that I was going to be defending Melania Trump, but I still don't understand what she's being knocked for. Whatever she did in her life that we can pass some moral judgment on was 15 years ago. And she married Donald Trump. I wouldn't have married Donald Trump, but that's the choice she made.
I don't think Donald Trump would have married you either, Kevin.
Well, you don't know that, Cliff. You don't know
So
that.
I'm going to tell you what she's done. I'll tell you what she's done. The way my father would put this is she failed to answer the call. Right? The trumpet was sounded and the charge to, move forth in battle and meet the challenges head on came to her. And she shirked away from it. And 1800s military history, but
I bet I would like your father a lot. I bet
you would love my father.
I'm going to add something. I bet your father would hate me, but
no, there's a responsibility, right? It may not be the task. I mean, think about every great work of literature you read. There's a protagonist who has an external problem put upon him or her. They don't want to have their world change, but they have to face it bravely. And she's failed to really do any of that, which is baffling.
So what are you saying? She was miscast in an epic drama?
Yes, we've now compared Melania Trump to Anna Karenina.
In all honesty, when Michelle Obama took up childhood obesity, and the right went at her saying, "You can't tell me how to feed my children," and we were like, but childhood obesity declined like bigly. I'm going to use that word, bigly. During the Obama administration, and they improved food standards and nutritional information and blah, blah, blah. And they made sure that pizza was not considered a vegetable and things like that. And ketchup was not a vegetable either. And school lunches. But she took up a cause, much like every other first lady, whether it was...
Well, Melania has a cause, cyberbullying, but...
You're shitting me. Excuse me. You're kidding me.
That's her cause. Cyberbullying. That's her cause. Cyberbullying. I'm serious. I'm being serious.
I just want to say in context, I think using bigly or huge in reference to childhood obesity is probably a poor choice of words.
I apologize to any bigly child out there then.
I was a bigly child. Don't say that.
What are you talking about? I'm a bigly man.
My mom would buy us 2 Happy Meals. 2. We were the fattest, only black children in our town. And you know what my mom said you need? You need to be ostracized further. 2 Happy Meals for you.
We've just coined a new term, bigly child, bigly children, which I think it's going to go viral. So listen, we've talked about some great love couples in the news this week. We've talked about Bill O'Reilly and Peggy Noonan. We've talked about Melania and Donald Trump. We've talked about Ivanka and Jared. Now let's talk about the other hot new couple in the political rumor gossip mill, Jon Ossoff and Karen Handel of Georgia.
Are they engaged?
They are going to be engaged in a battle royale for the congressional seat in their district. What do you guys think? Does Ossoff have a chance at unseating or taking that seat away from the Republicans?
Flip a coin.
Really?
Oh, no. I think it's a little bit more. I'd say it's like 55% or 52%. I think the fact that the momentum is behind and that we're seeing the shift, and we saw it in, what was it, Montana?
Kansas.
Yes, Kansas.
Yeah, you're just off by a few hundred miles.
It's somewhere in the Midwest and it's flat and boring.
Also, Montana is not the name of a very good band, as far as I know.
I think Ossoff highlights an interesting problem that you're going to see play out across Democratic candidates throughout the country in upcoming elections. And I think that problem is the identity crisis, right? It is the party, the Bernie party of single payer and everyone goes to college for free and everyone gets 40 acres and a mule. Or is it a party of bureaucrats and technocrats and people who recognize the interests of big business and are as friendly with Wall Street as both Obama and Hillary were?
Why can't it be both?
And what's going to have to happen? Well, because to some extent, right, those things are mutually exclusive.
I don't see them as mutually exclusive.
They shouldn't be. The Democratic Party has set it up to be mutually exclusive. So what's going to happen is you're going to have candidates like Jon Ossoff who are going to lean things further to the right, further away from single payer and the Bernie trajectory, and the identity crisis can create a big fissure, and you'll have essentially two different parties within the Democratic Party, but in Congress.
You mean what's going on with the Republican Party?
Exactly.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Happening with the Republicans right now.
You mean the Democrats might actually win?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't go that far.
Okay, so we've talked about people who are running for Congress. How about people who are leaving Congress? Specifically, our good friend from Utah, Jason Chaffetz.
Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
What do you think was the story behind this, Greg? Why do you think he's leaving? We know he said 1,000 days in Washington, haven't seen my family since I was 18 years old, and all these typical bullshit reasons. What is the real reason for Chaffetz abandoning a pretty secure seat?
Oh, I have a conspiracy theory which is totally like built on nothing. I think the Russians actually finally have something on him. I honestly think it's a Julian Assange, has called him and said, "Hello, Mr." I can't do a Julian Assange accent. I wish I could. I think something's going to drop. I think in the Russian probe or something, they're going to say, why are all these blank checks made out to Chaffetz? Or they're going to find him showering with, bigly children. I don't know. But it's going to be something.
Helena's head was shaking like a bobblehead doll on that.
No, I think though I do love conspiracy theories, I don't think that it's that extreme. I think it's two things. One, being the chairman of the oversight committee is significantly less interesting when your party is the party in power in the administration. And I think if Hillary had won the election, he would still be here, unless this is all due to some scandal that hasn't come out yet. The second thing is I think he's running for something. He's either running for governor or he's setting up, I would like to believe maybe he's setting up a 2020 bid. If not, for something. I'm going to tell you. Okay,
but
here's
he's
another
a
theory.
failure.
Hold on.
He's a
failure. Hold on. I've got another theory. I have a theory. I know, also baseless. I've got a theory that there are a couple of smart people who have listened to this podcast and they've heard the inoperable tumor theory, right? Trump is an inoperable tumor. Once they can excise him, they will. And they are positioning themselves now to be ready to capitalize upon that in 2020. So that when we have an open field in Helena's perfect world in 2020 without Trump, there are people who are ready to move in.
No,
so I would like to believe.
Now, do you know why he hasn't seen his family? Do you know why he hasn't seen his family in 1,000 days or whatever?
Is it Russian prostitutes?
Because every time he walks in, his kids go, "Daddy, what's that smell?" And he goes, "Oh, that's the stink of failure, kids. I'm sorry." Because he reeks of failure.
And hypocrisy.
Thank you.
There's another mundane explanation that I think everybody's ignoring, and that is that he's very simply got a very juicy offer as a consultant, not a lobbyist, a consultant in the private sector.
That's a possibility. I don't think people leave chairmanships of major committees just to go into the private sector. He's a young man. He could do that any time.
You could do that later.
Daddy, what's that smell?
He's running.
Greed.
He's running for something. No, he's running for something.
Okay. And finally, let's talk about someone who might be running away from something. Julian Assange. The WikiLeaker has now been had war declared on him by none other than the Trump administration.
I think that was in a tweet.
They're trying to extradite him or something? Where's that coming from? What's that story about?
As James T. Kirk put it in Star Trek VI, first rule after the assassination, you kill the assassin.
Wow.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
There is
no, that's great.
There is something that has puzzled me about the whole Assange saga, and that is this: all that the Ecuadorians, it is the Ecuadorians, right? Who he's been holed up in their embassy for a couple of years.
Yeah.
All the Ecuadorians had to do in order to end this whole mess would have been to issue him citizenship and then hand him a diplomatic passport 2 days later, or go through a whole mechanism of sending him out in a diplomatic bag onto a diplomatic plane, and they could have gotten him out under one cover or another of diplomatic immunity. It would have been baloney, but it would have worked under the way those rules work. So I have no idea why they've had him stuck in their embassy for all these years.
So last question, and I'll go around the table. Who faces a U.S. courtroom first? Julian Assange or Edward Snowden? Who faces a U.S. court first and a U.S. jury first? Julian Assange or Edward Snowden?
Edward Snowden.
Assange. Snowden has a major power giving him cover. He's safe.
What do you think, DJ?
Tony Blair will end up in a courtroom before either of those two will.
Well, now that DJ brought Tony Blair into the picture, all that's up. I would say Assange.
Okay. Well, on thoughts of a dreamy Tony Blair, I'm going to say thanks for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/More Perfect Union Podcast, and share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And remember to check out our midweek More Perfect After Dark podcast, where we take you behind the scenes to hear what we chat about once the official show is over. And guys and gals who love to debate politics, if you'd like to join us in our debates midweek, you can find us in our political group on Facebook. It's called Open Fire Politics. We're all there, and we'd love to see you there too. Ladies and gentlemen, anything you'd like to say before we bring this party to a close?
Yes. Do not buy your children 2 Happy Meals. It's unnecessary, and it makes them fat and friendless.
Don't buy them a unicorn thing either.